This is 91.3 FM, WCW in Worcester, Massachusetts, the Dr. Chris Radio of Horror program. And tonight on Radio of Horror, we have actress, director, model, filmmaker Emma Dark on the show with us, all the way from England. Thank you for calling into the show with us across the ocean, Emma.
That's okay. Hello, everyone.
Emma has a what looks like to be a fantastic vampire movie coming out called Seize the Night.
Yeah.
Tell us about this film, which Scream Magazine has given a huge review about.
They have, yeah. They've given it a 3-page review, which is pretty much unheard of, I think, for a short film, really.
Mm-hmm.
I've done, incredibly well with it so far, and it hasn't even been released. So it's basically taken up the whole of 2015 and the end of 2014. It's quite an epic film. It's only a short film. It's 12 minutes, 48 seconds.
It looks so much more epic than a short film from the trailer.
Yeah. There's a lot of sort of conspiracy and intrigue, and it's vampires and werewolves living in a human world, and kind of they're battling against each other, but they're battling against much bigger things as well. And my character Eva, she's basically she was a vampire assassin, and she was imprisoned by humans and experimented on, and she can't really remember much about these experiments. But she basically got out of this kind of hospital prison place, and she is hell-bent on revenge, and it's got to the point she doesn't care who she kills, whether they're vampire, werewolf, human, whatever. She just wants this revenge. So she's pretty much on the edge. She's pretty much losing it.
Now, you're not just the star of this little short. Did you, what are your other titles with it?
Quite a few. So basically producer, also director, and editor and colour grader, and of course I've done all the marketing and everything as well. So it's been pretty intense, to be honest.
I was looking through your Facebook page also, and you just recently met Zach Galligan from Gremlins.
Yes. Yeah, there's a cinema in London called the Prince Charles Cinema, and they kind of specialise in showing, well, what you term as vintage kind of movies now. I mean, it's not really vintage to me because I was kind of born, everything, when the Gremlins were out, and I watched it in the 80s. But lots of people get quite nostalgic, and they go back for lots of these different screenings, and of course new fans and stuff. And he was there, I think, for about 3-4 days in a row, doing intros to Gremlins and Gremlins 2 and sort of fan opportunities and stuff like that. So it was really interesting and really cool to meet him.
Zach's been on Radio Horror as well. He came on a couple of years ago.
Wow.
Do yourself a favor, check out his, he did a fan podcast commentary with Adam Green and Joe Lynch from the Movie Crypt on Gremlins, I think a year ago.
Okay, I'll check that out.
Yeah. And of course, your movie is probably heavily influenced by Underworld, of course. Hence, I see the Underworld action figure.
Yes, it is, but it's not just... I mean, the problem is everyone will draw comparisons with Underworld because I'm a female. And I'm wearing the leather and stuff, and I'm a vampire.
Yes,
but it's
and you're British.
More, and it is one of the influences, but Blade is probably a little bit more, actually. And there are other things like Dracula 2001, Razorblade Smile, which is an indie British film.
I completely forgot about Razorblade Smile. That movie does not get the attention it deserves.
I know, it's brilliant. It's a great film. And if anything, I think Underworld probably stole some ideas from there.
And there's a new Underworld coming out next year.
There is, yes, yeah. Quite interested to see what that one's like.
But I like the, I definitely like the noir feel of Blade, especially the first movie. Del Toro did something completely different in the second one, and the third one was kind of an action mess. But the first one definitely had this very different gothic feel to it.
Absolutely.
And we've had one of the stars of Blade actually on the show as well, Traci Lords.
Wow.
From the very beginning of the movie.
Yeah, I love her part actually in that. And her accent in that is pretty amazing.
I know you're also a big fan of The Crow, keeping with the gothic leather-clad hero themes.
Yeah. Just a bit, yeah. I'm a bit of not an obsessive fan. I'm not an obsessive fan. But yeah, I do really like The Crow, and I've got quite a lot of memorabilia now.
You should have tried to petition for them to gender swap the Crow storyline, It'd be Erica Draven.
I'm not too sure about this remake, to be honest.
No, but I'm always interested in the gender swapping of things, and maybe it could be Erica Draven.
Yeah, well, why not do something a bit different? you know.
And she comes back to avenge her husband, her boyfriend, her husband, or whatever, you know.
It could happen. I think there is actually a female crow.
There is, but she's a rape revenge victim. I mean, just blah. So she's basically I Spit in Your Grave, but in crow makeup.
Okay.
You know, I mean, we could do something else.
Yeah.
Just because a woman comes back from revenge doesn't because, you know, they don't need to write the plot line because she was raped, you know. It could
be different.
Yeah, I mean, there's a great revenge movie. Shoot, I forgot the name of it, but it stars. Oh, I'm gonna edit all this out now. But it stars the woman who was in Silence of the Lambs.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, and
Jodie Foster.
Jodie Foster, and she loses her boyfriend and her dog, and she ends up in the hospital. I think she gets like beaten up and mugged. And then but she's also a famous talk show host, and she kind of behind the scenes while she's talking about her story on the radio, she's becoming a vigilante and blowing away criminals left and right.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that one. That sounds pretty good.
It is.
Check it out.
It is. But back to this. Where did you film Seize the Night, and how long did it take to film it?
It took quite a while actually. It took probably about a month and a half to film, but we're just talking about weekend dates really. I think I had about 9 different shoot days, which is quite long for a short film.
Oh yeah, for 12 minutes, absolutely.
Yeah, but I did have to do a couple of reshoots. That's the problem with making something quite epic and trying to do it on weekends and on a very tight budget really. But yeah, it's mainly shot around London, St Albans, which is near London, and I think a little bit in Dunstable as well, which is again it's all near London really, relatively.
Now, do you have to go through a lot of different weapons training, because you use a lot of weapons I see in the trailer?
No, not at all. But I did have a bit of fight coordination on board from Roy Scammell, who is basically he's a really famous stuntman. He's now sort of semi-retired, but he worked on loads of films. He was the alien in Alien. I mean, there are a few stunt people that played the alien, but he played the kind of in the end scene where the alien's ejected out of the shuttle. He also did the fight coordination on A Clockwork Orange. He trained Christopher Reeve for Superman.
Oh wow!
It's kind of endless. He's done loads of James Bond films, and if you look, there's I don't know actually if it's in the trailer or not, but there's a bit where I kind of cross my arm and point the gun, and that's directly from Bond, and that was basically Roy. So you wouldn't have actually thought there would be anything to do with Bond in my film, but there is.
And you've also been in Island of the Blind and Island of the Blind Dead.
Yes.
A Tombs of the Blind Dead homage. What is
Yes.
Tombs of the Blind Dead?
It's basically a cult series from the 70s. It's kind of like it's Mediterranean horror. I don't think it's not one of those things that lots of different people know about. It is quite niche.
It's Italian, correct?
Yeah. Well, it's not Italian actually. I think it's Spanish. Yeah, it's basically a series of cult films, like Mediterranean horror. And it hasn't got a massive following, but it does have quite a cult following. And having seen the films, they're really fun. So in some regards, they don't make a lot of sense. Especially the second one. It's pretty crazy. And they repeat a lot of shots and stuff in the films. So it's kind of really made on a shoestring budget. But the whole premise is completely original, and that's what makes it fun. And you've got these kind of undead, what do you call them? Like resurrected knights. And they're blind and they're just kind of chasing people, but they move at the speed of a snail pretty much. Yet they always catch people, a bit like in the old zombie films. So yeah, it's a really fun kind of film series, and I wanted to do something as an homage to it, really.
The name of your company that is putting these short films together is Mortuary Productions. Do you guys have anything planned coming up that's going to be bigger than a short film?
Not at the minute. It really depends, because it does take quite a lot of money or quite a lot of time to make a film, and really you want a kind of balance in between, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, I would like to make a feature. I'd like to make Seize the Night into a feature, or even better, a series. But that would take an investor coming on board. So that's probably the next thing I'm going to start to look at.
Now, what were you doing before you did Seize the Night?
Well, that was Island of the Blind Dead.
Well, I mean, sorry, before Island of the Blind Dead, what were you doing?
Not films. I've only come into film stuff recently. So I started off modelling, and that was actually it's almost 7 years ago now. Like alternative modelling stuff, sort of gothic and that thing. And I got quite far, got quite a lot of recognition. I won World Goth Days Best Model in 2012.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that was quite a good award, really. And then in 2013, I starred in a Kim Wilde music video. It was a horror music video, which one of my friends directed. And I played kind of like a lead vampire in that. And that was the thing that kind of sparked me off to do video type stuff, really. And we're talking about the sort of stuff I went into was interviewing people and that kind of thing. People in the paranormal scene and people in the horror scene. And it wasn't really until I interviewed some fellow filmmakers at Fright Fest in 2014 that I kind of thought, okay, I had been thinking about doing a film for a while, but it was all like one of those things that's a bit unreachable because the amount of effort that has to go in and the budget and stuff like that. But I basically thought, well, I'll just bite the bullet and I'll do what I want to do, and that's exactly what I did do.
Is making a independent film in the United Kingdom very difficult? Because here in the States, it seems like people are doing it like left and right every day.
Yeah, there are lots of people making films, but again, you've either got to think of a really original concept that you can do on a really, really small budget, but then you're probably compromising a lot of your production value unless you've got a really good team on board, or you've got to get budget to do something. And I think it does seem to be quite easy to get a budget. Usually it's for the style of the film is not the kind of style of film I would make. It's usually kind of very slashery type stuff that manages to get a budget quite easily, or zombie films.
Now, growing up, were you a big horror movie vampire fan?
Yeah. I've always liked horror. I think the first horror film I actually watched, which is actually a dark fantasy, was The Sword and the Sorcerer. And actually that got switched off about halfway through because my parents thought it was too grim for a small child. And I rewatched that last night, actually, after many years.
Was there any particular model or film that made you want to get into modeling or, gothic modeling? What was the big draw to it for you?
No, not really. I mean, I've always wanted to do a bit of modelling ever since I was about 14. I didn't really specifically want to go into gothic modelling. It just happened to be that when I joined a camera club, sort of 7 years ago, they thought I joined as a model. So I thought, okay, well, this is good. I may as well go for it and do some stuff. And the fact that, I'm a bit of a goth and have a lot of dark clothes and stuff just invariably meant I wore those kind of clothes, because it's all kind of, apart from the fashion companies, when you start off, a lot of it's creative modelling. And it's usually sort of, you inject your personality, so you wear the clothes that you own.
Yeah, absolutely. Or in Tarzan photography, I notice is a lot of the stuff that you do in the more dark, bloody, gory, macabre modeling.
Yeah, Oren does a lot of kind of horror photography. Yeah, he's done a lot of things. If you look up his, I'm not quite sure what his Facebook page is actually. I think it's just Oren Tarzan Photography. He's got a lot on there with a lot of different models in baths of blood and all kinds of things, really. So he's really into the macabre.
Like there's one image of you and another woman stabbing a redhead with tattoos on her chest to death.
Yes. There is, yeah.
When you get to do stuff like this, get into the super gory horror stuff, whatever, do you center yourself? Do you go to your happy place? Do you try and get all the darkness out of your head, or do you just come right into it, balls blazing?
I come right into it. I think it's fun. It's real fun actually to do that kind of stuff. The more character modelling type stuff. The fashion photography is quite boring, to be honest. You get nice pictures of you wearing nice clothes, but it's not all that interesting. But the kind of character modelling stuff, so yeah, pretending to stab somebody and all that kind of stuff is actually more fun than it sounds.
We follow a lot of books and comics here. Are you and do you read any comics, or is there any particular book that you're reading?
Yeah, so I do actually take the train a lot, and that's about the only time I get to read at the minute. But I read a lot of horror fiction, and I've got through everything of Sean Hudson. He's my number one favourite author. He's awesome. And I'm now reading a whole bunch of stuff by Graham Masterton, which is a similar kind of horror, quite gory and everything. And I think, at the minute I'm reading Basilisk by Graham Masterton.
When you're making a horror movie, is there any tropes or horror stalemates that you want to stay away from and do something different?
Not well. I mean, the only thing for me is I really wanted to actually avoid gore, which sounds quite contradictory to most of the things I've just said on this show. But I do find a lot of indie horror, particularly short films, just rely on gore to kind of make a statement, really. So yeah, I was quite against having any gore in Season 9. So quite contradictory to everything I've said on the show. I'm actually quite against gore. And that's just because I think it's been overdone in indie film, especially kind of short horror films. And a lot of the time, the films just rely on the gore to make them. So that was something I was keen to avoid. And there's only actually a small amount of blood in Season 9, and some of that is CG blood.
Do you prefer using practical effects over CGI?
It really depends. It just depends on the skills of the artists themselves, I think, to be honest. I mean, I was quite lucky with Season 9 because I had some great practical effects people, Luke Smith and Steve Bosworth, who are kind of like local artists to me, and they're absolutely fantastic. And then for the VFX CGI stuff, I had somebody called Davey Simmons on board, and he is absolutely amazing because CGI, I think, as most people know, it can be very, very bad or very, very good. And Davey is absolutely fantastic. And how he's not working for a top Hollywood company right now, I have no idea. But he did a brilliant job on Season 9.
Well, everyone can go to find out more about you and your projects and whatever else you got coming up soon on www.emmadark.com. And then where can they go to watch Season 9?
It's not released yet, but if they go to www.seasonnightfilm.com, I've got bits on there telling people about screenings coming up, the trailers on there, and some other bits and pieces. I'm hoping to release it early-ish next year. It all depends on the festivals, really, because I've still got submissions in for quite a few, so I just have to see.
Awesome, Emma. Well, we appreciate you taking some time out to come on the show with us to talk about Season 9. Again, I saw the trailer, and I just had to have you on the show, as well as just your modeling pictures as well, and your whole look in general. It's right up our alley here at Radio of Horror.
Well, yeah, it's absolutely fantastic to have come on the show, and thank you very much for inviting me.
No problem.